Alright, welcome to another video. In today's episode we are going to be talking about podcasts because I recently started the OpenSuspect podcast with the other members of the OpenSuspect project, and I wanted to share my way of editing podcast audio in the free and open source software Audacity. So maybe you are recording a podcast online because you just live very far away from the other participants, or maybe, due to the pandemic situation, you cannot really leave your home to record your podcasts together, so you decide to just call each other on some online service and basically just record the podcast totally through the internet. And it would be very easy if you could just record it, like you record your microphone for your own audio, and whatever's going on your computer, you record that for the audio of the other participants. But this method, while it seems very easy, it has quite a few drawbacks, such as if you talk over someone else, because, there is some kind of latency in every kind of internet-based communication, and it is very easy to talk over each other compared to real life. And if you do that, there is no way to resolve it. Also, you are recording your own voice through your microphone, but you record the other people's voices through the internet, and so if the internet connection for some reason drops, then the voice quality of the other people will be worse for that part, and then it will come back. Also, other people, so everyone has a different microphone, has a different mouth to microphone distance, I guess, so the volume levels will not be well balanced, and it is much more difficult to balance these things out if everything is recorded together. Also, just like with talking over each other, if someone makes some weird noise, maybe, their chair creaks, or there's a door slammed in the background, or whatever happens while someone else is talking, you cannot really remove that noise if you record everything together. So how I decided to edit the OpenSuspect podcast's audio is that I asked everyone who is on the podcast to record their own audio separately. And if we go to this Audacity window here, you can see that I already loaded up the track which contains my audio. And you can see here that there are parts where I'm talking, like these high volume parts. There are parts where I'm not talking, these low volume parts, and there are a lot of random spikes. Even my own volume is not really consistent, so here my volume is a little lower, here it's a little higher. So you can see that there is a lot of issues. If I just recorded everything together here with the other people's audio, I would not have any chance to make this conversation really enjoyable experience for the viewer. So first step, so this is the raw audio I have. My first step that I usually do is noise. It's the noise cancellation, or the, what is it called? The noise reduction. So for that, you need to select an area in your audio and then select the noise reduction here and get noise profile. So this will be usually very quick. So now let's just zoom out and let's select everything, and we can go back to the effect noise reduction here, and just basically this is kind of the most important slider here. Just try to find a noise level, or basically like a reduction level that will be sufficient to remove all the noise. So let's select this, and you can see that this will last quite a while. Okay, so now that we reduce the noise, we can see that in the parts where I'm not talking, the waveform has actually been flattened out quite well, which is good, which is what we wanted. But let's just check how it affected my voice, because if you set a really high amount of noise reduction, that would remove some frequencies from your voice that would make it sound unnatural, so it is a better idea to check how it sounds. Okay, so welcome everybody to the OpenSuspect podcast. Yeah, so basically it's a little annoying, my voice is a little annoying, but it's nothing I can do about that. But the noise reduction effect did not change my character of the voice, so that's what I wanted it to have. Just remove the noise without affecting my speech too much. And so let's go to the next effect. The next effect is going to be the compressor. And the compressor is basically lets you flatten out the volume. So you can see that some parts of this waveform is much smaller. Here I talk louder, here I'm talking a little quieter, but I want everything to have kind of a uniform loudness, and I can use this threshold and ratio settings to find my ideal curve. So for example, if there is some kind of very small noise like me having fun with my keyboard, this kind of less loud voice I want to keep quieter, so I don't want to set my threshold too low, but even I want my quietest speech voice to be amplified there. So this is kind of what you should use your this threshold setting for. This is how you should use this threshold setting, and this ratio is just going to show you how much you want to flatten this out. And basically I think like above 5:1 doesn't really matter that much. Maybe having a little lower makes your voice sound a little more natural, and just giving it like a very well compressed big ratio for the compression that might make it sound a little unnatural. Attack time and release time will basically kind of some kind of the temporal settings here. So if you have a part of the audio which contains some very loud spikes compared to the other ones, which I don't think there is a good example here, maybe this one. So this one spike is much louder than these ones. Would you want all these waves to be amplified to the same level as this big one? Do you want like this part of the audio to be amplified like to the same height as this one, or do you want this to stay like relatively the same in relation to this big spike? So these are the kind of the settings that you will have to do. And so let's just select everything here again, and let's just apply the compressor. And this will also, of course, take some time, so let me pause the recording while it happens. Alright, so you can see now that all the parts where I was talking got amplified to a very similar level, but some problem also happened, and that is the noise level got also amplified somewhat. And so you can try to apply the noise reduction again based on maybe this part, but unfortunately, while usually the noise level is uniform in the raw audio, after you apply the compressor will amplify some parts of the video more, or the audio more, some parts a little less, so your noise level will not be uniform, so applying the noise reduction again will not work well. So what I would do in this case, if this noise level, you might think this is you can see like this noise level is acceptable, but if you don't find it acceptable, you should just undo the compressor and undo the noise reduction and just change your noise reduction settings a little, so you can get rid of even this residual noise there. So these two effects, they take a little time to apply, but you don't really have to put in much manual labor into these, so I think it is a good idea to just experiment with these. Okay, so these are the first two steps, and I would do one final step before putting the three, or like all the, so in this case I will have 3 tracks recorded separately, but before I'm putting all the tracks together, I would like to clean up this track more, and I will do that for each and every track, and that is using this envelope tool. So what this envelope tool will let you is basically you can select points on your envelope in Audacity and change the volume directly. And what I would be doing here is that I just zoom in sufficiently, so every time when I'm not speaking, so for example, here I don't know what's going on, but it is not really speaking. So I just remove this part, just reduce the volume to 0. There are some parts where I am definitely not speaking, but there are some noises. So I'm like clicking noise and things like that. So just remove these parts. And this is kind of what takes, I think, the longest time, or one of the longest things. So there are parts where you can see like this part I'm definitely speaking, so I'm not gonna bother with that, but maybe, I want to just remove everything in between. And this one just requires you to go through in not the biggest detail, but kind of in sufficient enough detail that you remove this kind of random noises from the audio. This won't take as long as it would take to listen to the whole recording, but it will take up some time. But I think this is an important part of cleaning up the audio, so really take advantage of the separate recordings. So maybe, when you are not talking, you are listening to your friend, maybe you do something random on your desk, so it will pick up, the microphones will pick up some random noise, which will not really disturb anyone during the conversation, but will make your listeners wonder what the hell is exactly going on down there. And before, I'm not going to do this because I already done, but I will just show you in a minute how my final file looked after the cleanup. Alright, so here you can see that I removed really everything that is not my speech. So you can see if I turn this on that I used this function, this envelope tool, extensively. I even used it to remove some noises between some sentences when it was necessary. So I was talking a lot in this podcast. That's what makes it more difficult, especially because I speak, then I listen to the answer, speak. So that kind of parts, it might be a little more difficult to clean up. There are some parts I didn't, some parts I did clean up depending on if there was any noise while I was quiet. So maybe I'm talking about something, I take a few seconds to think, and I just crank the chair or hit the keyboard or some noise happens. Those things got removed from here. Alright, and once we've done this, it is a good idea to just export this to a separate file. You can export it to a waveform if you don't want to deal with compression, or just I usually use the OGG format because it is compressed, but it's kind of well compressed. It doesn't have that much drawback as an MP3, but honestly, most people wouldn't hear any difference. So probably I wouldn't hear any difference. No one would hear any difference if you just export as an MP3, because it's just a person talking, it's not music or something. Alright, so once we've done that to each and every of the tracks, then is the time to fit them together. Alright, so I imported all the three tracks into the same Audacity project, and remember that until this point I have not changed the timing of any of the tracks. What I did is noise reduction, compressor, and just cleaning up some parts of the audio, but the timing is the same as it was originally, which is very important because this is the time when you need to match these three tracks together. You can use this arrow tool here, which is called time shift tool, to move these tracks. So it is a good idea to maybe, just count in and clap together, 1, 2, 3, clap. And everyone claps, and if everyone claps together, then at least you have something to base your synchronization off. Or maybe you don't have, then you can just have to figure out how on earth these tracks fit together. I'm just going to be making some guesses, very wild guesses here. And this is the time when you have to go through this whole thing and, just cut out the things you don't want. So it is very rare when you just have a podcast recording with no technical problems inside. So maybe someone disconnects and then just waits until they reconnect. Of course, the beginning, so people don't start the recording at the same time, so you can just, select a part like this. Always try to remove things together. So just select, oh my god, what did I do? So maybe I want to remove this part, then don't forget to remove this silence from the other recordings at the same time. And there are times when people talk over each other, and that one, you can basically solve that with a very, very simple trick. what I usually do is like there's people talking over each other, and maybe, I cannot solve it, otherwise I have to just cut it with Ctrl X and then paste it somewhere else. That's an option. Or if there is enough silence on the other track. So for example, here I could just, say this part cut and put here, and we can see that now these mesh together quite well. So I can leave it there. Or maybe sometimes, let's say that here there is no silence in this track, but I want to put it in there somehow. So what I can do is I just find, let me zoom in a little more. So find a place where there is nothing happening, and I can do generate and generate silence. And let's say, how much silence do I want to generate? I want to generate exactly this amount of silence, so that is 0.5 seconds. So let me just say here, generate silence of 0.5 seconds. And here I will generate the silence after this. And don't forget to generate the silence somewhere in the other remaining tracks too. So now that we have time there, we can just Ctrl X and Ctrl V it here. But probably this doesn't look like someone talking, so probably this one just should be cut out anyways. So this is kind of how I resolve the times when people talk over each other. And so when you resolved all the people talking over each other, removed all the awkward silences, removed all the irrelevant parts, then you can just add a little spice to your audio by putting someone a little to the left, maybe 20% to the left, 20% to the right. And so you can give some spatial separation for the people of the podcast. So when someone is listening to it with two ear plugs in, or listening to it on like a stereo system, then there will be like a kind of the feeling that someone is sitting here, someone sitting there, someone sitting over there. I think I prefer this to just like everyone talking from the same virtual spot, but I guess it's a personal taste. And you can export the files, so you can just export everything together, but I prefer to use this export multiple dialog here and just give like a directory, and this will export all the 3 tracks into 3 separate files. So you should just, give them some kind of the name, which is different, because when you import them, it will be just the file name will be the name of the track. And so when you want to export it, you should, this should have a different name, because when you export it to export multiple, you can just use the track label, track name. And so this should be different than files that are already existing, or you can just add some numbering, whatever, this kind of options there. And why I prefer to export to 3 different, or like each track to its separate audio file, is because then you can use the separate audio files as kind of to drive some kind of animation. So when someone is speaking, their icon can lit up on the screen, and someone else is speaking, their icon can lit up on the screen. So for example, in Blender, you can use the audio levels to drive animations, and that one will only work if these are all exported into separate files. But if you don't want to do a video, you just want one single audio file exported for just the audio-only podcast applications, you can just use whichever export here you would prefer. Alright. So I think this is the end of today's video. I hope you learned something on how to use Audacity to edit your online podcasts, and I wish you good luck with your podcasts in the future, and listen to our podcast, the Open Suspect Podcast 2. And well, if you have any more suggestions or questions about this topic, you can leave them down below in the comment section. Give me a like if you enjoyed this presentation, this tutorial, and subscribe to me if you want more tutorials or just free software related content, Linux related content in general. And I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.